Hi, this is Don Taylor from PLP Pathways, and we'd like to welcome you to our 7th episode of the PLP Pathways TV show. We're sponsored by the Middle Grades Collaborative and the Tarrant Institute, and today we have a special guest from Up for Learning, and Executive Director Helen Beattie is here with us. And Helen, we've been talking a little bit about PLPs and Act 77 and flexible pathways, and if you could please just summarize Up for Learning and how you're working with Act 77 for our viewers, that would be great.
Great. Well, thank you for the opportunity. Up for Learning we began about 9 years ago, really emerged out of the Vermont Principals Association desire to figure out a way to better elevate students in their learning, in the creation of their school environment. And so a model evolved, a pretty deep model of ways to find a means for young people across the grades to be able to have a voice at the table, both within the immediacy of their classroom environment, because we know that matters in engagement, and also at the school at large, working on the implementation of 77 and the implementation of proficiencies from their own unique perspective, but being agents of change in the process.
And Up for Learning, is this a national organization, or is this just something that's right here in Vermont that you started?
It's just something that's right here in Vermont that I started, and in this context of the VPA and a group of people who are collaborating on it. We've now become our own nonprofit. But we're just in Vermont. We're in 37 schools this year. We have 4 main programs. Each of them provide a different door into young people finding their sense of self and agency in the world in partnership with adults. I might add that the adults often grow and change as much as the students do when they do this work together, but that's our quest.
And now I've been to the Up for Learning website. Is that upforlearning.org?
It is.
Okay.
And I should clarify, Up for Learning stands for Unleashing the Power of Partnership for Learning. Our first name was Youth and Adults Transforming Schools Together, which was too long, and that was YATSed. Yeah. So we're Up for Learning, but have really an equally long name.
And so I would encourage viewers to definitely go to that website, the Up for Learning. I've gone through it, and there's some tremendous resources, videos, articles, and descriptions of the work that Up for Learning is doing. And speaking of that work, could you maybe focus in on one example of, if I'm a teacher and I'm thinking about personalized learning in Act 77 and I'm looking for support, and I contact Up for Learning, can you give me maybe a couple supports that you offer to teachers?
Sure. One of the programs that we started 4 years ago with the advent of 77 was an effort called Communicating School Redesign. And what we did was mobilize teams of students and teachers from schools around the state. There have been 15 high schools to date, so about a quarter of Vermont high schools. These youth adult teams have been charged with building understanding and support for change, because what we found is that unless students, teachers, and community members understand why this is important, unless their mental models can better align with the reasons why flexible pathways to graduation matter, all the good work we do is going to meet with resistance. So these groups have found many effective strategies to help build understanding within their schools. And so we have a ton of tools and strategies that are all open source, accessible on our website, like infographics and compelling videos and in gorgeous song that a group of students created to message a vision for change that can be used as a catalyst for dialogue. Just was honored at the State House as for its beauty and impact. So we have many of those that are open for anybody to use. It's our deepest desire that they get out and are utilized in the field. So that's one thing, just tools and strategies that they can grab and use within the classroom or in community meetings.
So as a teacher, I would be able to, one of the things that we focus on and we talked a little bit about this before, is really working with the identity of kids and learning their strengths and challenges, but also talking to kids about their community, their learning community, the town they live in, their their family relationships. And I think it sounds like that you focus a lot on building those positive relationships at school, and also having kids start to accept responsibility and start to really develop some initiatives that incorporate the adults in the school and also the communities. And you also mentioned some flexible pathways. And can you, Up for Learning, how do you envision flexible pathways, and what might that look like for some of the kids who are in your program right now?
I think that the program that best touches on the evolution of flexible pathways in a school is our Youth and Adults Transforming Schools Together, our original program for 5 years. That was all we did. And it's young people and teachers looking at the level of engagement in their school through the lens of rigor, relevance, relationship, and we added shared responsibility. That we don't do education to or for young people, but we do it with them. And what does that look like? And then they look at those elements of engagement within their school, and then they bring data. They collect data and bring it out for dialogue. So what that does for a school is suddenly everybody has a language of learning. Because I think one of the biggest impediments for a student to feel like they actually can shape what's going on for them during the school day is not having that meta understanding of what is learning about and what is my role in that process and how can I take control and shift and move those pieces in partnership with the adults. That loop of continuous visible learning. And so that program, and again, this curriculum is online. There are many ways that you can help our materials and our processes help young people take a stand firmly with that knowledge of who they are as learners and shapers of their school environment. Then they have a right to do that, and they have a right to do that because in partnership, that's when the best learning happens. That's so there's that. The other one that I would really want to put an exclamation point on, that what I've described is more systems level, communicating about change or looking at elements of learning on a systems level. But as a school psychologist, which is what got me into this field, to create this organization, what I saw that most deeply troubled me was students who were struggling, who felt like they were the problem, that somehow they were deficient, and began to believe that to their core. And we know that that wasn't the case, and we know that nobody was not trying to serve them, but to be able to help them believe in themselves as learners and have the metacognitive skills to be successful was something that I've come to see as critical, and especially critical when they have to take on greater and greater levels of independent learning responsibility. When you think of personalized learning and flexible pathways, and how do you help young people shift to the extent, I mean, we have gorgeous teaching in Vermont, but there has been, our dominant model has been, in many instances, they've been more of passive in their learning situation, and they've been extrinsically motivated, and now we're shifting them to take a significant amount of responsibility and be intrinsically motivated with proficiencies. And that's a huge shift for them. And central to that, I think, is to teach them about growth mindset and metacognitive strategies. So we've created a program where we train high school students, and we're moving this to the middle school as well. There's a curriculum. It's 10 sessions that fit within the advisory time frame of at least a half hour. And we spend 2 days helping these cadre of young people learn this curriculum, envision themselves as teachers, and help them to have those skills. But then they go back and implement that in their schools. So they run 10 advisories. BFA Fairfax and North Country are doing that this year. Hazen's done it. And And so we have the strength of peer-to-peer teaching, and we have content that in itself is empowering to every learner in that.
So it sounds like there's a number of elements regarding advocacy and also mindset, and also helping kids be more self-directed learners. And one of the things that we talk about on PLP Pathways is this move from teacher-directed learning to student-directed learning. And that in and of itself is the spectrum that we talk about, and how personalization really, the more you get involved with it, as a teacher I feel, the more you get involved with it, the more you start to move towards that student-directed curriculum, just because the students, I think it increases engagement, it increases their understanding, it allows them to explore areas of interest, and then our job becomes providing the foundation that they can start exploring a secondary school or the flexible pathways or the dual enrollment, based on what we've seen in terms of their proficiency, but also their interests. So it sounds like a lot of what you're doing is supporting, really supporting that mission, which is great. I mean, that's the biggest, I think, change that I've seen in my teaching with the personalization, is that there's much more of a drive to get students in control, because once you've experienced students in control, it's so powerful that you keep chasing that, and it becomes really hard to stand at the front of the classroom and tell kids what to do when you have all these vibrant, creative humans who are, who want to be engaged. And that's one of the things I think that why we're here with the PLP Pathways. So that's really great to hear, and I think it's really important, again, if you're watching out there, that Up for Learning is a great resource. Helen's actually the first guest that we've had on this show, and it really sounds like, as you mentioned, the circle is starting to get tighter, where you hear about more organizations that are helping people who are implementing Act 77 and all that contains. I have maybe one final question. The other thing that I noticed as you were explaining this is how well that would fit in with PLPs, having kids capture the evidence of their learning, and having kids be responsible for spreading these ideas and reflecting on their learning and their growth and setting goals. And so, at least for the model of PLPs that's being advocated by the state, it sounds like that really would fit in well. And I guess the last question I have for you is, where do you envision Up for Learning in the 2 to 4 year time frame, knowing how Act 77 is progressing, and knowing how teachers are at different levels and working with personalization, flexible pathways, and dual enrollment? Where do you see your organization in 2 to 4 years? Where do you hope you see it? And how do you envision yourself, again, working with the teachers in that future?
I see us doing much the same work, but deeper and wider. Certainly, we were doing this work pre-77 and proficiencies, but felt like we were floating on the margins. When those came to the fore, suddenly our work had meaning. There was a felt need to help young people take this new role. And so I think every year we learn how to do that a little better, often from not doing it as best we, it's the process. So I want to continue to always dig down and do it better. But I do think M3, the mindset, metacognition, and motivation, to expand that K-12, feels really important, that's the fundamental skill set that young people need to be successful and believe in themselves as learners and have that capacity. So if there's one area that's going to sort of, I think, morph more than others and grow more than others, it would be M3.
So, and just as you're explaining that, I'm thinking to myself, as a middle school that just got the 5th grade, so we have 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, what an opportunity for leadership that would be, to have your 7th and 8th graders perhaps learn more about what Up for Learning has to offer, and then to be able to mentor and coach the 5th and 6th graders as they're coming up, and then again collect that evidence of leadership and citizenship on their PLP.
And the M3, the new model next year, will be to have the middle schoolers take 5 sessions to share that with their peers, but also have an add-on, if they want, to do a book book buddy with K-3, because there's just great books for little guys, and to think of developing a mentoring, but books chosen because they help the younger students understand mindset and metacognition and those basics. That's totally exciting to me.
Yeah,
so yeah, cross the grades and civic engagement and a sense of purpose with peers all feel like powerful parts of it.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it. I appreciate getting to know your organization a little bit more. Again, this is Helen Beattie. She's the Executive Director of Up for Learning. We encourage you to visit her organization on the website or send her an email if you have more questions. The more I've talked to Helen, the more I realize how much of her work really can fit in with Act 77, no matter where you are in terms of implementation, and no matter where you are in terms of personalized learning. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks also to Orca Media for letting PLP Pathways film in the studio, and we'll see you next time. Don't forget, we also have a webinar that's coming up on Thursday, March 23rd. In that webinar, we'll be talking a little bit more about Up for Learning, but we'll also be talking about equity and personalized learning. Thanks very much, and we'll see you soon.